There's no doubt that iTunes has been a game changer in the music industry. It has brought us closer to an all-digital world. But recently, Apple has changed how iTunes functions by removing iTunes in total. So in honor of iTunes dying and now spiraling this new app, let's see the brief history of iTunes and where it's going from here. It all started in the 90s with two ex-Apple employees, Jeff Robin and Bill Kincaid. After leaving Apple, both of the men went on to work on their own projects. Bill in particular was working on Mac-compatible hardware, one of which was a driver that supports a line of music players called Diamond Rio. Jeff would join him and the two would create their own MP3 software called SoundJam MP. The software proved to be a success. This was also during the time when Apple was interested in the music industry. At first though, Apple wanted to purchase Rio's competitor, Panic's Audion. The only problem though is that Panic was busy already with America Online for a negotiation, so Apple turned to SoundJam instead for an acquisition. Now being back at Apple, Jeff and Bill would continue to work on SoundJam, making it simple, adding features, removing features, and eventually it would transform into iTunes. iTunes would launch on January 9th of 2001, while SoundJam MP would be discontinued on June 1st of the same year. Also that same year, the iPod would be released on October 23rd, and with that, Apple would add support for the iPod with iTunes 2.0. Skipping a version, the iTunes Store would be added in iTunes 4.0, and Apple would soon realize a potential market. During this time, iTunes was only for Mac users, and soon Apple would announce that they would be allowing iTunes to be on Windows products for version 4.1. And over the years, with some of its additions, iTunes has been growing. And even with the iPhone and iPod Touch having their own iTunes Store in the device, it was still being used by iPod Shuffle and iPod Nano users, but iTunes was still useful for the iPhone, iPod Touch, and iPad for syncing the devices. But then there was a sign of the end coming close. Before the iPhone 6 and Apple Watch were announced in September of 2014, Apple removed the iPod Classic. The reasoning was that they didn't have enough materials to make it, but it's also pretty clear that the iPod idea itself was fading away. 4 years later, in 2018, Apple would remove the iPod Nano and Shuffle from their store, leaving the iPod Touch as their remaining iPod. And then of course recently at WWDC 2019, Apple would announce that iTunes was going away. Sort of. The reasoning that I was getting behind it was that the era of uploading songs to your device is over, because our device can do that now. Apparently though, that wasn't the reason. That also wouldn't make any sense because iTunes has other purposes, but that's actually the reason that iTunes is gone. So in order to explain why iTunes is gone, we have to explain where we're going from here. So of course there's still going to be a music application for the Mac, but some of the features within iTunes are going to be split between 3 apps. You will no longer be able to find podcasts on iTunes, now called Apple Music. They're going to be on their own separate app. The same goes for watching movies and TV shows. That's now going to be on Apple TV. Apple said that by splitting the 3 programs into their own apps, they would all run faster on their own. I'm assuming also that they just wanted to focus on music for the music app and have podcasts and TV have their own thing. It feels really debatable because on the other hand, having everything in just one place seems better and it seems more like something Apple would do. But I also feel conflicted to agree with Apple's decision because these are all separate things. But what does this mean though for people who still like using an iPod? Or people who still want to sync their phones to their Mac? Well, no fear. Now you'll be able to sync your iPod and iPhone on the Finder window, and you'll still be able to upload your songs and data and stuff to your iPod and save the files, all that good stuff. As for Windows users, iTunes is not going away. Also, because this subject's still relevant, I'm gonna have to say this about the Pro Stand. Apple, dear Apple,
what's wrong with you?
So thank you guys for watching and I will see you in the next one.